Game of the Year 2021. And funny enough, I keep hearing like a lot of people say the same thing, that there wasn't a lot of really great, profound like video games that came out this year. And maybe for me as well, there wasn't anything that insanely substantial, like the obvious Devil May Cries or like a Resident Evil 4 remake, you know, or something like that. For some, I think there is definitely some substantial shit that dropped throughout the year for some. But it's mostly got to be like, is that the thing you're into though? You know, it mostly boils down to not very generalized, like obvious game of the year material stuff, more focused and prioritized audiences that like, damn, I've been waiting for this kind of thing for a hell of a long time. Holy shit, this game slaps my ass. And it definitely will hit some of the accords that a few of those audiences have been kind of looking for. To some, it's gonna feel like it's been, yeah, like a slower year, but depending on what you played, this year could actually be kind of dope. I got a couple of general ones on my top 5 list, but there's definitely some like, I think I have to give acknowledgement to 2 that I don't think make top 5, because they are technically expansions on what already exists. If I'm doing my pre-top 5, the earliest consideration I have, and I have to mention it, was Ghost of Tsushima Iki Island. Iki Island? What was it? Iki? People forgot this came out this year, man. There was a lot of shit that dropped over this year, and it's kind of hard to keep track over what all of it was. Ghost of Tsushima Iki Island dropped earlier this year, about a year after the initial game, and this was already one of the games that I thought was one of the best games of 2020. This game was pretty great, man. And it's funny, my 2 games that are like top of the list, but not exactly in like top 5 recommendations, if not nominations for Game of the Year, this shit was great. Like, if talking about an expansion, ignore what's happening right here. Talk about an expansion that is a good, healthy amount of content, along with a pretty solid like 6 to 8 hour like minimum campaign with way more stuff that you can actually do. I think if one of my biggest top noms has to be Iki Island. Like, already just adding even more and even better stuff. To be honest, one of the biggest things of the previous game, as far as like filling out the world and putting more stuff to do in the world, they directly acknowledge a lot of that in this version of the game. Yeah, Ghost of Tsushima was already a game that had a ridiculous amount of like content available to it, and to me, they just expanded upon that. They just gave you even more, which is funny. So this is my early recommendation. I can't give this a game of the year because this is just an expansion to what was a game of the year from the previous year, right? However, it's very similar to my next personal game of the year. Like, goddamn, this expansion was great. I gotta say Intermission, right? It doesn't make top 5, but if you want to talk about, like, this is an expansion that's gonna add 6 to 8 hours of playtime at least, and it's going to add completely new mini games and substantially make the aerial combat better and improve a lot of the things that made FF7 Remake original. Obviously, points that they could improve upon, this game improves upon them. I feel so similar in terms of what happened with Ghost of Tsushima Iki Island, as well as this one. Like, they literally address the issues that the previous game kind of had, or the first version of the game had. So there's a lot in this that made me very happy, and there's a lot in this that I hope that they take forward into the next game. And it's pretty clear that we're all like wondering, oh man, do they know that this is a problem? Like, this can definitely be improved upon, the level design, all this kind of stuff. Like, there's always like worries and moments where we don't know if the devs are aware of this stuff, and this showed us that yes, they're aware, and they're gonna do their best to hopefully make adjustments to that in like future games, because I already really enjoyed the level design. I don't think the level design was, you know, a gigantic Dark Souls leap, but I thought it was a lot better. I thought it was a lot better than what was presented in 7 Remake Original. And not to mention the combat. Like, this game also got to show that you can do character combat without having the other character be just playable, right? Actually utilizing like attacks with other attacks and coordinating that stuff appropriately without having to do the switch mechanic all the time. Pretty dope, right? I actually thought it worked out extremely well with Sonnen being like, yeah, the dual tech guy. That's what I've always kind of said that I would want to show up in this game, is Chrono Trigger like dual techs. And imagine like, you know, quad techs, potentially tri-techs in the future. I don't know. It all leads to something that could be potentially super badass in the future. So this is like the first proof of concept version of all of that. And to me, they nailed it. They absolutely nailed it. They nailed the mini game, dude. The not the Golden Saucer, the Fort Condor mini game is great. It's super fun. It's varied. It gives you reasons to go out and do other quests to get all the expansions to the pieces and stuff like that. Very fun. And more importantly, probably one of the slowest, drabbest mini games in the previous game, in the original. They made it pretty engaging and actually fun, you know? Improved Final Fantasy VII in almost every single way. It improved the story. It made Yuffie likable. I'm a big fan. And it also set up for even more information as far as where the sequel could potentially be going. So I got to give a shout out to at least a couple of these games. These are like my nominations, my early shout outs for things that aren't like direct game of the year, but definitely I think was substantial. And they did a great job, and they were just expansions, you know? Just expansions of existing content. But for improving on that content and giving us more of what we want and making it even better, my God, man. Yeah, I'm gonna give it to Ghost of Tsushima Iki Island, as well as the Yuffie expansion for Final Fantasy VII Remake. To my number 5. My number 5 game of the year. And let's talk about this. Game of the year number 5. Resident Evil Village, or Resident Evil Hate. So, funny enough, when this game came out, it's like a ridiculous amount of fun. To me, it comes across as like an even better Resident Evil 7, like a more fun version of Resident Evil 7. Less scary, like more fun. Weirdly enough, like I can't give it a higher recommendation simply because the VR experience that I had with Resident Evil 7 was transformative. And I think it just is going to have a profound impact on the way I feel about that game, no matter what. Like I didn't just run through and solve puzzles in Resident Evil 7. It being my first VR game, it was like, it was an experience, man. Like I felt like I lived inside the baker's house for several hours. So I can't really, it's gonna be hard to ignore that, but I did really enjoy a lot of what this game is setting up, like the setting. I loved the castle settings. I love the European environment settings that they set up in this game. I think the art direction is fantastic. I just don't feel that what they're going with like the first person mode, I personally felt that after it's been done for quite a long time now, this game being more action focused, I don't know if the first person element enhances that, right? I get it, right? They're trying to make the game less scary, more fun. But at the same time, I would almost prefer the game to be like third person if that's the case. Because in third person, you possibly could get away with more mobility, more mechanics, more combat stuff. And yeah, there is more combat stuff in this game than before. But, you know, you're not going to get a Doom Eternal out of Resident Evil 7. You know, you're always going to be somewhat limited to what you're going to be doing with a slow-moving Ethan in terms of an action game. But for what it does well, which is like the environmental stuff, it's got great characters, it's got a pretty decent story. I would argue that I probably enjoy the story of this probably more than any Resident Evil game since RE4. And in RE4, the story is like pretty bare bones and kind of straight to the point, but it's simple and effective. And I think that's what this game also does well. I really enjoy what it's setting up with like story stuff, a little more like RE4. And I think because it's similar, you know, this game already is so much RE4 in its DNA that it's weird that there could potentially be an RE4 remake out there as well, considering how similar this game is. But here's the big thing. I think RE7 was such a dramatic departure from what Resident Evil is in the same way that RE4 was. That leaves a profound impact. And this is essentially just an expansive element on what the previous game was. So to me, when the devs are like, okay, the previous game, too many people got scared at Resident Evil 7. Like, the devs literally said this. Like, too many people got freaked out at this game. We're going to tone down the scary stuff. And they essentially focus more on action. I actually don't mind that for the most part. My biggest issue is that when you boil down the action in Resident Evil 8, it's fun and enjoyable. And I think I would like to replay this game again more than Resident Evil 7. But at the same time, I don't know if I remember much of it because of it. I don't know if it comes across as being like something that's going to sit in my residual memory for a long time outside of pretty much the one thing that everyone says about this game is the most profound part of the game. What is it? House Bienvenido? The crazy baby house, right? The Dada. House Bienvenido, yes. Everyone's going to remember the dollhouse sequence. And it's crazy and it's great. And it's pretty much a walking simulator for the most part. But good lord, like, damn, the devs were having fun with this shit and I'm having a great time. Like, oh my god. So, yeah, in some ways, I feel like Resident Evil 8 is kind of like a Resident Evil 4 theme park, you know? Where Resident Evil 4 does the gameplay parts a bit better. But I think, like, obviously the aesthetic and the visuals of this game and the environments are significantly improved over something like Resident Evil 4. They just don't sit in my residual memory at nearly as much as some of the moments that happened with, like, Resident Evil 7 in VR. So I really enjoy this game. I really like it. It feels like I'm digging at it a lot. But it absolutely, I think, is one of my considerations, my top 5 game of 2021. Because I really had fun. To be honest, also, one of the things that I loved the most about it was the treasure mechanic. And that's just, once again, a thing that they're taking from Resident Evil 4. So, but that was great. It was great revisiting areas and looking for treasure and engaging with the environments and trying to find all of this stuff. Genuinely fun. The weirdest thing is that we're still waiting on other elements to show up. Like, we've been wanting to see where the DLC for this game is going to go. And they've mentioned that there is going to be DLC, but it's been severely delayed. We don't know anything about it. And the Resident Evil 7 DLC significantly, like, improved the game in some ways. That Joe Baker DLC was awesome. It was ridiculously fun. In fact, the Joe Baker DLC was kind of similar to, like, this game. It was sort of action-packed and in your face and really gameplay engaging. The RE7 got, like, 2 expansions of DLC. This one hasn't gotten any yet. It's just, like, the main game. Along with, like, some extra stuff, like, you know, the Mercenaries and stuff like that. But the Mercenaries was cool. Like, it's okay. It was supposed... Yeah, we keep forgetting that this game was actually supposed to launch with Resident Evil Reverse. It was supposed to. And that game is still put into absolute Capcom tyranny. We don't know what the hell's going on with that game. So that was going to be initially a part of this game's package. To its strength, this game has a lot of replayability. I mean, I think that's the strength of all Resident Evil games, you know? A good Resident Evil game is extremely fun on a replay. If you know if you have a good Resident Evil game, if, like, you are crit pathing the game and you are taking things from one place to another and unlocking things in a timely manner and not wasting time, like, looking for stuff, that's great, you know? Like I said, there's a lot of really redeemable, wonderful elements that make this a more fun version of Resident Evil 7, in my opinion. It's just that something about it didn't strike me as much as RE7's experience did, because it's mostly like the same thing, but more. Now you get more enemies, now you get more environments, now you just get more of this. That's what a sequel's supposed to be, but it sort of lost that shock factor, you know what I mean? And that is just case in point for the Resident Evil series, the Resident Evil franchise as a whole. No other of the third-person, like, Resident Evils were as good as Resident Evil 4 between 4, 5, and 6. So it's just the way it is, you know? Either way, I still think it's absolutely worth playing. It's worth checking out. It's definitely worth, like, a sale. This game actually has quite a bit of content to it. It's got a pretty good amount of playtime, like at least 10 to 12 to 18 hours if you try to get everything. So... I recommend Resident Evil 8, but I don't think it's deserving of a higher spot simply because of all the aforementioned reasons. And I think I might have recommended Resident Evil 7 a bit higher back in 2017, I think, when it came out, because it was pretty groundbreaking and different for the Resident Evil series. Yeah, there's some things in this game that are, like, worth it. 100% worth it. In fact, I am... This is how sort of like, to me, I remember some boss fights. Okay, I remember it now. I could not remember what the last boss in this game was for like a solid 10 seconds there. I had to like think through it. I was like, wait, what was the last boss fight? Oh, that's right. It's that thing, you know? It takes you a second to sort of like, it didn't even, immediately I can remember some of like the last boss fights in previous games and stuff that like immediately sticks out to you. But some of the moments throughout this game, I kind of like, wait, what was it? I mean, it was a good fight, but it's just, it lacks some of the impact, you know? And that's sort of the thing that I'm sort of relying a lot of this on. How impactful was this shit when I was playing? And I think it's good. I think it's genuinely good, but it doesn't have that staying impact. Anyway, highly recommend Resident Evil 8. I think it's great. I highly recommend Resident Evil 7. I think it's also great. But I think 7 does... I think I really enjoy Resident Evil in this perspective, in the first-person perspective, focusing on the scary. I really... And to be honest, even with Resident Evil is in the third-person perspective, that can be scary too, because Resident Evil 2 Remake is the perfect balance of scary and action-packed, right? It's the best combination of both worlds. So, it is what it is. And, I don't know if I want them to do this again for Resident Evil 9. It seems like they might not. I hope Resident Evil 9 again takes it in a different direction of some kind, because I don't know if I want it to be first person all over again. Isometric, yes. Isometric Resident Evil. That's what we want, right, chat?